Hi, everybody. This video recording is for you to reference from our January in-service. And if you missed it, this is to get you kind of caught up. One of the things that I think we really can learn from the Savior's visit to the Americas is how to teach. And we know that he came and he did a lot of teaching. And sometimes, and for good reason, we spend a lot of time focusing on what he taught. But I'd like to have us look at it through the eyes of teachers to see how he taught and see if we can learn something from that. And one of the most valuable skills I see is something that happens from the end of chapter 3 Nephi 16 to the beginning of 3 Nephi chapter 17. The Savior has, for the last chapter and a half, been following what he said is a commandment of the Father, which is to preach something that comes out of some of the Old Testament prophecies, mostly from Isaiah, but a little bit of Micah and others. Our scriptures say in verse 17, and then the words of the prophet Isaiah shall be fulfilled. But actually in the original manuscript, the word is, and when the words of the prophet Isaiah shall be fulfilled. And then it gives 3 verses from Isaiah 52. Probably the reason why that word went from and when to then is because Jesus doesn't finish the thought. But it makes more sense because in chapter 20, 3 Nephi 20, verse 11, he picks up again on this theme from Isaiah 52 and says, now, like I said, if you remember, when I said Isaiah 52 would be fulfilled, and the Lord picks back up. So why does he stop in the middle of a commandment from the Father to teach a particular curriculum about the scattering and the gathering of Israel from Isaiah? Well, the answer is in the first couple of verses of chapter 17. Behold, now it came to pass that when Jesus had spoken these words, he looked round about again on the multitude. And he said unto them, my time is at hand. Now notice what Jesus, the teacher, notices about his students. I perceive that you are weak, that you cannot understand all my words, which I am commanded of the Father to speak unto you at this time. Therefore go ye into your homes, ponder on the things which I have said, ask the Father in my name that you may understand, and prepare your minds for the morrow. Now, Jesus is about to leave. He recognizes on the faces of his students that they've had enough, that they can't keep on going at this pace, and that right now, if he were to try to force this lesson that he's commanded by the Father to teach them, that they wouldn't catch it. And so, as a master teacher, he calls a timeout. He shifts gears from what he was going to do. And what happens next is actually kind of awesome. We love 3 Nephi 17 because in 3 Nephi 17 is when he heals all the sick and he blesses the children and the angels come down and they don't want him to leave. They want to be healed. They have other needs. And Jesus pauses his commanded curriculum to meet those needs. He then institutes the sacrament because they don't want him to leave. And so he says, well, there's a way to have me always with you. And that's the sacrament. He does all those things and then he leaves. And then when he comes back the next day, he does a few more things, catches everybody else up, does the sacrament again, prays with them, teaches them how to pray in a powerful way, and then he starts back up with the curriculum. Now, when I think about what you and I are charged to do, we have a monumental task. We have the next generation of the disciples of Christ, the future of the church in our hands, in our classroom. And we're asking them to come at 6 a.m. for a lot of you, which is like maybe one of the worst times to try to connect with teenagers because of their sleep cycle and their circadian rhythm or whatever. This may be one of the hardest times. But our challenge as teachers is to pay attention and to observe the needs of our students. So how do we know what to even look for when we are observing our students and their needs? I've gone to seminary.churchofjesuschrist.org and I've clicked here on the training to get us over to the resources that we have been given. I'm going to go to the Gospel Teaching Learning Handbook, the 2021 edition, to show you a chart that I hope is not new to you. We have an objective in seminaries and institutes of religion, which is to bring the youth and young adults to the Savior. And what the students will need to experience in order to be brought to the Savior are these 3 things. And these aren't going anywhere. These are kind of the theme of what we're going for in seminary and institute. We want our students to become converted to the Savior, which includes them knowing, loving, and following him. We want to have experiences in the classroom that are relevant. So that means that they are meaningful and useful to the students' lives. We don't want to just keep things in the ancient scriptural world. It's got to be brought to their lives, and they've got to see why it matters. And we want to create a place where they feel like they belong, where they are safe, supported, and valued. And so that's what we need to observe in our students is, are they coming to know, love, and follow the Savior? Is what we're doing meaningful and useful to them? And do they look and appear and sound safe, supported, and valued? Now, if we come down to this page, how do teachers know if they're succeeding in helping the learner experience of conversion, relevance, and belonging? Well, there are some things we can do here. Now, this admittedly is for full-time church education employees. There are student surveys, there is a self-assessment, and then there is an official observation feedback form from our supervisors and things. But actually, it's not very hard to make this into a stake early morning seminary thing, because there is still value in surveying our students to find out whether or not what we hope is happening. We can always do our own self-assessments. And then, of course, you've got your stake supervisor and myself who are always ready to come and observe. You've got team teachers. You've got priesthood leaders. Heck, you've got parents. If you wanted to, you could record yourself. But what I would like to focus on for the month of January is this idea of getting the information from our students, whether or not we're succeeding. Now, if we go to the Teaching in the Savior's Way manual, and we go to the purpose of teaching in the Savior's Way, you're going to see a chart that looks very similar to the Gospel Teaching and Learning chart right here. But it's actually not exactly the same. The Gospel Teaching and Learning chart is actually a prototype. It came before a more refined chart here with Teaching in the Savior's Way. You'll notice that the focus on the Savior has been moved up here to be its own thing, whereas right here it's in the middle. And then you'll also notice that certain things are reworded. So when we're looking at love those you teach, for instance, as we're trying to be like the Savior and pay attention to the needs of our students, there are some things that have changed a little bit here. So we want to preference the Teaching in the Savior's Way manual. And you'll notice right here, seek to know them, meaning your students, understand their circumstances, their needs, and their strengths. This is what we are going to focus on today. And how can we do that? How can we survey that? Well, today we're going to talk about one way. So I'm going to go to the part that talks about love those you teach, because that's the heading. And I'm going to scroll down, see how it's got the 5 points here, to the part that talks about Savior knows and understands their circumstances, needs, and strengths. And I want to come right here to the middle. So we want to ask our students questions, and we want to listen carefully and observe. And of course, we want to pray. But this is what we want to do above and beyond everything else. For this month, we want to start asking our students some questions about their experience. Now, if I go back to the Gospel Teaching and Learning, and you see that we have here also love those you teach, and you've got learn the circumstances and needs. 1.2 talks all about it. But the part we're going to look at is this one right here. Different learners have different learning styles and learning needs. Some are visual learners, while others learn by verbal participation. Some learners can comprehend best by listening, while others prefer reading. Seek to understand the learning needs of the individuals in your class so that you can provide learning experiences that meet their needs and allow individuals to learn in a variety of ways. So what I've done is I've come up with a very simple survey. And all you need to do, I'll share this with you guys. You'll have the link. And what you'll want to do is make a copy and then put it in your own Google Drive. Or if you don't have a Google Drive, you can just take these questions, steal them, put them on a piece of paper, whatever. But if you're going to use it on Google Drive, you need to make your own copy. Otherwise, I'm going to start seeing all these surveys coming in on my Google Drive. And I wouldn't make this anonymous. You want to know what your students are doing or how they feel. And so here's how I did it. What is your preferred learning style? And just ask your students. Are you a visual learner? Do you like object lessons? Do you want to see pictures and videos? Is it better for you to visualize what is being shown? My guess is a lot of our students feel this way. Are you a verbal learner? Do you like class discussions, or do you like group discussions or little partner discussions? You need to think out loud. I'm one of those kind of learners. I figure stuff out by talking out loud. That's why I'm such a gabby student. Some of you, probably very few of this generation, are listening learners who love just taking notes and receiving lectures and having presentations. I threw music in there as well because you're listening to music. Maybe that one moves them a little bit, but my guess is most of them don't like the talking head. Are you the kind of learner who loves reading and writing and just having some personal time to journal and to write it out and to think it out? Some of your introverted students are that way. Or are you a hands-on learner? Do you need projects, scenarios, case studies, kind of what we do with doctrinal mastery? Does that really help you kind of figure it out in a more applicable sort of way? And then I left the other because maybe there's a different kind of learning. And so in this first question, I just want them to choose one. What is like your primary learning style if you had to choose one? The second question is, click all the other ones that you actually do okay with as well, that you also might prefer. And there's some students who may say, I like any way you want to teach me. But my guess is you'll start to see a pattern of what ones they really enjoy. And then just to know which learning style do you really struggle with. Now, the purpose of this question is not to give you a learning style to completely avoid, because chances are in any given class, you're going to have some that students struggle with that are others' preferred way of learning. But it will be helpful for you to know and to pay attention to what it is that your students need and how they experience best the gospel. And if there's some that they struggle with, maybe that doesn't mean spend less time. That may mean spend more time, but more focused time in helping them get better at that thing. They may not like it because they're not good at it. Maybe. But anyway, and so my recommendation to you first is to find the right way for your students to survey their learning style. Teachers, I hope that tool is helpful for you. I would invite you this week, as you're getting back into the thing, again, figure out when the best time to do it is, but survey your students. Find out what their learning strengths are and their preferences are, and what learning styles maybe they struggle with. And maybe even have a conversation with them about that and the usefulness of different ones and maybe how they can go about practicing it. What we will do going forward this month, after you've gathered that information and practiced a little bit, trying to adapt lessons a little bit with that in mind, is then we're going to move on to the next kind of skill that's with this, and that is, how do we observe students in the classroom? And what do we do about it when we see that they are struggling to engage? But for now, this is enough. Let's just get that first understanding out of the way by asking them and observing them. And in this way, we could be like the Savior Jesus Christ, who is the master teacher.